This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Bentliff, and Haleh Fardi is with us, as she always sometimes is. And Haleh, it's always so good to be with you and see you. And one of the things that I admire so much about you and enjoy talking about with you is kind of evolution of business. And we've talked about this even in our own spaces, or even in my space, sort of where were you? Where are you? Where are you headed? And it's interesting that often our sort of operational mindsets don't keep up with those things. So we'll do something on day one, and on year 7, we'll have still been doing that thing, maybe without regard for how things have changed. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me your perspective on the necessity for us to have self-awareness in this space, and what do we do with that? How often or how much should we be changing, or how do we know what those symptoms of change are? Just kind of help us understand this whole situation.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Chris, for this time. And as always, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. You bring out such great insight into our thoughts. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
As we're getting into the strategic planning period of the year, I mean, many of our clients started in August, and definitely September should be the beginning of your budgeting and planning for 2025. We find that a lot of people start during that fourth quarter, November and December. And by then you've already lost January and February, right?
Right.
Because
December 20th, everybody come up. We're going to have a 2-hour lunch where we're going to plan the next year.
Yeah.
I understand.
And we're looking at that, and we sit with our clients, or we sit with our, in our conversations, and people are having the same issues as they've always had going into next year. Their budget didn't support their goals. They didn't have enough of a budget. And then there's this whole other list of they have financial strain. Customers are not staying as long as they should, or they brought in the wrong customers. My favorite, and we've talked about this before, marketing says sales isn't closing the leads we give them. Sales is saying marketing isn't giving me the right leads. And what we're finding that many people don't do is the idea of the business they're running and the business they're running are absolutely two different things. So the business model, just as you said earlier, why they started the business and what they thought they were building and how they're operating is very, very different. What they're selling and their services are really, really different.
That's so profound that I feel like we ought to take a minute. And I have some experience with this, where I've been working with organizations where I've even said to the sales manager, the thing you're selling is not the thing these people are delivering. Like, it might be the version that you wish it was, but it isn't. Where's the disconnect there? And this is insidious. Nobody starts out that way. Nobody thinks, nobody plans for that. It just sort of happens. How does it happen?
So I'll share that with you right now, but I want to write this down because you're missing one part of it. You're saying it's not what your people are delivering. Well, it's not what people are buying either. There's a whole other side of it. So what you're selling is not what you're delivering, but it's not what people thought they were buying. and look at all of that. So either you're spending more time and expense if you're professional services. We have organizations that we don't do change orders, right? When people are not understanding what they bought, or what we're delivering is different than what we sold. And so that's what affects your profit. It affects employee burnout. It becomes siloed management in each one of those departments. I mean, there's a lot of undesirable outcomes that comes from this misalignment, right? Why is it happening? Is because people don't review their business model every year.
Now, that's really interesting, their business model. Because our marketing strategy or our sales strategy or our product development roadmap, but our business model, that feels like the kind of thing that we set up on day one when we go get a loan from the bank and then we never touch again.
Yes. So you had a pitch deck for your investors, and that was your business model. And then you may be pivoting, you may be adjusting, but it is not deliberate. It is reactive. It's not planned. You're not saying, okay, this is our business model. These are our customer segments that we want to go after as our ideal customer profile. We're like taking any customer we can because it comes from scarcity, right? And those customers may not have margin. By the way, marketing is still marketing to the old customers.
Yeah. And so everybody has a version of events. There's no like universal truth. There's no one thing for us to point at.
Yeah, exactly. And what we do here at ProCFO is our kickoff session is actually a business model review. And 99.9% of the time, it is a disjointed, misaligned team on what the business model is, the actual business is. Right? They can't even answer the questions. What is the problem we're solving? The minute we ask them, what is the problem you're solving? They're saying cash flow, profit, turnover. No. What's the problem you're solving for your customer? We need to know why we're there. When we ask them what the solution is, I just had it from someone. We're the best reputation, XYZ. No, what are they buying, to solve their problem?
That is a really good point. We surround ourselves with platitudes that we don't realize maybe are masking sort of inefficiencies, and we think that the thing we do is. I'm always amused with things like quality is job one, Ford's old thing, or service is our last name, or whatever. Like there's any business who says the opposite of that. We don't care about quality. Like those are not things that you are selling to somebody. That's those are table stakes. People understand. They assume you're going to bring quality into this thing. What is it that you're actually selling? How do we get confused with that?
Yes, and then why are they buying it from you and not someone else?
Yeah.
So now then when you get a CFO, so why is this important? Why is it important for a CFO to know what you're selling? Well, we want to track it. We want to see if it's profitable. We want to see what resources we need to allocate to getting those clients. We want to be able to know what the as I said, margins are for cost of goods, what kind of, overhead you're going to associate to that. So people say, well, why don't you just give me financial reports on what? What am I reporting on? Right. So that's why it's important for us, because everybody says you're pro CFO. Why do you need to know the business model? First of all, I'm going to be your CFO. I need to know, what am I running here? How am I supporting you strategically?
You raise a point where there's that disconnect continues into expectations of the people around you. So and we've talked about this a lot. So my CFO should be a strategic complement to me. My CFO should be thinking strategically with me. They're not just going to be spitting out reports so that I can look at data. This idea of this thing doesn't keep up with your growth or your vision or your existence extends, it gets throughout the whole organization in one way or another. We forget who's doing what, or who could be doing what, or what sources are available to help us do something different, because we're kind of myopic in this space. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In this fast-moving environment, economic environment, and the industry environment, technology environment, AI environment, if you are not looking at your business model, you're just randomly pivoting. There's a storm, and you're like, what if I go this way? What if I go this way? But if you start your business, I used to do this in every company. It's like, what if today was the first day? What if I just bought this company? What is it? What is it that I have here? What are our operations doing? So normally when you talk about CFOs or your financial people or inside your leadership team, you want to cut costs, and you say, what shouldn't we do, right? To cut costs, especially during the time of budgeting and strategic planning. When you look at your business model, you're looking at what should we be doing? And then you prioritize that. And by not by default, but by plan, you stop doing things that are not part of your goal, your path. And when I say 90%, we're working with small to medium entrepreneurial companies. They're just doing what they've always done. And they're smart. These are smart entrepreneurs. But so even if the CEO or the owner of the business knows where they're going, because they haven't sat in a room to look at their business model with all of the stakeholders, each one has their own perception and idea of what they're doing.
Which, by the way, that for a founder especially, that can be not a natural skill set. The idea of sharing my vision with others gets in the way of my impatient ability to quickly move. And that can be another disconnect. How I started the business was with these big ideas, and I still have big ideas. But I guess at some point I'm going to need to bring everybody into my big ideas, even if they change on Thursday. I'm not getting anybody pushing back against that. That disconnect exists too, where my ability as a founder or as a visionary does not connect with my ability as a leader of that vision, you know?
A leader's role is to be able to, have the vision articulated and engage their team. That is their role. And our Revenue Flywheel tool is actually a tool for them to be able to do that. That's why we're talking about this. Now that you have the vision, are you able to talk about it? There's a tool. There's 5 questions you need to be able to answer or discuss with your team. And we love, and I'll open this up and share it with you. We love giving this tool that we have to the team and say, without conferring with each other, each of you fill this out. We bring it into a room and everyone's like, well, that explains it. Right? And it's so powerful. People think it's just financial. It affects the way you hire. So personally at ProCFO Partners, if we don't articulate or speak well in our recruiting process, that we're not a placement agency. And if we don't share with our clients or our customers in the customer journey, we're not a placement agency. We're your CFO. We match you with an expert CFO. If you want a placement agency, there's wonderful placement agencies out there. They'll give you a body that has some experience. We don't do that. We're a member of your leadership team. We do a cultural match. We make sure when we're there, we're identifying where we fit in that leadership team, what role we're filling. CFOs have multiple roles. We're going to talk about later what that title means, right? So even us, until we said it, we were hiring people who wanted to be placed in engagements. That's not what we do. And then we were like, where is this the wrong person? Why aren't they getting it? Well, we never told them we're not a placement agency.
So then you had to kind of go back in and tinker with your model a little bit to make sure that it is clearly understood.
In two areas, in recruiting, as well as with the client who says, give me a body. And we're like, we don't just do that. We're a fractional CFO. We're not a body in the seat. We actually have a role in your organization. And so we had to do it in 2 areas because we were experiencing the same issues ourselves in terms of CFOs not understanding what platform we were providing for them and clients not understanding the expertise and skill set we were bringing to the table. So we actually had to articulate it and make it part of our client journey and make it part of our recruiting process. So
great illustration of
yes.
realities. Can you share your framework with us and walk us through it a little bit?
Sure. This is actually a tool we use in every engagement. Instead of saying, okay, we need 2 weeks for discovery, or we have so many fractionals that we want to work with, say, I need a month and a half to learn your business. We do that in a 2-hour kickoff session. And in a 2-hour kickoff session, we use this tool. So for us, when we're looking at this, we only look at it through a financial lens. We're not business model strategists at ProCFO Partners. We're all business model strategists. But what we're doing here is really try to onboard to the client. We're trying to make sure that the team that we will be meeting with all these leaders are saying the same things, and we're trying to find inefficiencies and gaps in their processes. And so when we're looking at this, we're really looking at, you can see this is the market and this is the product. And the reason we want to do that is we have found many, many times that clients are doing that much, to my dismay, that 20-80 rule. Mm-hmm. And that 20% is actually not where they should be focusing their growth on.
Explain 20-80 super briefly so that everybody's on the wavelength.
20-80 is people say 80% of your revenue comes from your top 20 clients or 20% of your clients. So that's actually may have worked in the past, but sometimes in that 80% of your clients that are showing that represent 20% of your revenue, there's a jewel client. And one of the examples that I've shared before is a translation service who comes to us and says, I can no longer stay in business. I need help. Why? It was during the Great Resignation. It was during COVID. The cost of my labor is going up. My business is a municipality business. I have to work government agencies. I have to work with RFPs, requests for proposal. So I have to really be aggressive on my pricing model, but my cost of labor is going up, and I can't stay in business. So customer segment was government agencies, schools, and other government agencies. I said, oh, are all of your businesses, all of these through request for proposal? He said, no. I said, who else do you work with? He said, hospitals. I said, so hospitals don't need request for proposals. It's just a proposal. It's not you just say how you're going to work with them. He said, yeah, they're not. He says to me, they're actually really profitable. And I said, oh, so
there you go. There's
anyone selling? Do you have channels? Do you have anyone dedicated to going after hospital business? No, we should. That's it. That's it. In one meeting where that's a strategic decision. He had talent who's done it before and really was able to turn around what he thought was a marginal part of his business, but it actually had a great potential to be high gross margin business. So that's an example of how we would use this.
If you're on the podcast, everybody can go to ProCFOPartners.com and you can find this tool, the Revenue Flywheel. You can download it. You can take that information and you can schedule a review with the team. But if you're on the podcast, we have on one side problem. What's your problem? What do you solve? Solution. What are the features of the thing that you do that solves it? And how do you measure that? And then on the other side, we have who's your customer? What's your customer segments? What's the unfair advantage that you have that can't be easily copied or bought by competitors? And how do you reach people? What are the channels? And then there's a way to think about this with cost structure and then a way to think about your revenue streams. And in the middle is your unique value prop. What is a really short way of saying this is the thing that makes us different and worth buying? So this is the exercise, Haleh, that you over 2 hours spend with leadership to sort of fill this out. And I bet a lot of this is assumptions that they've made that they've never actually put down. And I bet a lot of this is, oh, we did this once 10 years ago.
And there's a couple of examples I can give here. We were speaking with one team. It was a second generation company, and we were going through this in for us to learn it during the onboarding process. And so a lot of these questions they didn't have answers to. This was a legacy business. They'd been running it. And so by the time I said, and they told me, look, we are a commodity business. There are 5 other businesses down the street from us doing the same kind of service. So I asked them, so why do your clients come to you and not to your customers? And he got really frustrated with me. And he said, you know what? We're here to solve some of our problems. We're not here to ask existentialist questions. Mm-hmm. And I said, asking why a customer comes to you and not your competitor 5 miles down the road is a business question. It isn't an existentialist question. And we need to understand that so we can allocate marketing dollars to why they're coming to you. And I think the light bulb went off right there that we need to really pay attention to this. And again, we're doing it through a CFO lens. We're not there to change their business model. We're there to understand and to be able to quickly provide value and to be able to quickly identify gaps in their processes. So that's one example of it. The other example that's really useful with this, think COVID. Think COVID. People want to have a warm meal, right? The problem is after work, people want to have a warm meal. That's one of the things they want. They want to go to a nice environment, either fast dining or fast food, or they want to sit somewhere and have a meal. Well, during COVID, they can't do that. So the solution, if it's a restaurant meal, is not going to meet their needs. The restaurant businesses went out of business. The restaurants that survived, what did they have, Chris? Do you remember?
I mean, they very quickly pivoted to come and pick your stuff up.
Exactly. And so in this case, they pivoted. But there are restaurants now that, guess what, post-COVID, one door is actually still a takeout door. Mm-hmm. Right? And these are like fancy restaurants in Chicago. They still have the takeout counter because they identified there are clients that want a good meal. They don't want fast food, but they want to eat it in the convenience of their homes.
And you bring up an interesting point there. Our behaviors changed. We got used to the idea of picking it up or having DoorDash or whatever, and now we still prefer that sometimes.
And we still prefer it sometimes.
It accelerated something that was already happening. We've talked about that before, where more and more we were looking for convenience. But now organizations that may have adopted these things as sort of a stopgap, as you're pointing out, many have kept them because your market has changed, your customers' tastes or preferences have changed, and you must therefore evolve with them.
Exactly. Now look at what happens here. That takeout counter is much more profitable than the restaurant counter. There's no cleaning, there's no service, there's no breakage, there's no dishwashing. So of course, the ones who are looking at their business model and their numbers are saying, okay, even though COVID's ended, let's open this side little business where people can come and take this food, and in the back of it, they increase their kitchen capacity, and there we go. So that's another example of it, but it happens every day in today. You don't need to have a pandemic to look at the opportunities we're walking away from because we're not looking at our business model.
Yes.
That's the opportunity side of it. I mean, I'm not a doom and gloom former CFO, right? The problem side of it is inefficiencies. You're going and doing things that no longer have a return. The customer is no longer buying that product. The channel is no longer producing the quality of the leads or the people that you want. And you have to look at this every year. You have to diagnose your business operations against your business model every year during your strategic planning session.
Where does innovation... So as I'm working through that and I recognized, well, there's an opportunity here, but it would mean that we need to, I don't know, we need to develop an app and we need to get a fleet of this and we need to get there can be a lot of things where you start thinking, okay, that's cool, but it's just too much for us to take that on. Is that the right way? Should I be thinking in terms of like big scope where I'm kind of telling myself no before I even get going? Or how do I think about innovation?
We use the Revenue Flywheel diagnosis as part of our kickoff. But at ProCFO Partners, we do an annual strategic planning session. That's a whole workshop with your team. And we also do a Revenue Flywheel session when the team is so misaligned that we need to get them in a room to agree on what the business model is. So when you're looking at this here, in our goals and strategy session, do you see here, we actually have innovation. So it's a great, and you see, this is engagement. So does the team buy into what you're selling here? So we actually need to have engagement. So when we're looking at where does innovation come in, first of all, what are we trying to achieve as business owners? What is the opportunity in the market? Why are we doing it? And then we put some numbers. We want to be $1 billion company or $1 trillion company. And then we say, okay, how do we get there? And in that one example that I gave you, they wanted to be a $15 million company in 3 years. And I said, who are you buying? The innovation wasn't product innovation. It was strategic innovation. If that's truly your goal, that you want to be the largest, you're not going to get to 15 million in 3 years with current operations, current life cycle. You're going to have to acquire. And in that particular case, that's how we innovated. And they had never even thought about it.
Which is like, I'm glad that you just tacked that on. Sometimes how we think we need to get to a place isn't how we need to get to a place. And it's really helpful to have somebody who can point out to us, well, there's other ways of thinking about how you might get to that goal without having to buy a fleet or without having to start an app or without having to do this. There might be other ways to do that.
To buy it. It's called buy versus build analysis that a CFO does.
There you go. I feel like that's a good bow on this. So that's a good loop bow on this whole conversation. And that's what we do.
And that's what we do.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. And the most important thing that today I was really excited about sharing this. The tools are there. It's just a realization that this is something you must do. It is a fundamental business activity. So don't go to a normal strategic planning session without looking at your business model, making sure your team is aligned to it, understanding what it is you do and why it is you're doing it. And otherwise, we're all just Keystone Cops, right? No. We're doing that thing.
These resources are available to you at ProCFOPartners.com. Just go there and a couple clicks and you'll be able to download this stuff and even then schedule a follow-up conversation. Haleh, this is one of my favorite conversations we've ever had, and we've had a lot that are my favorite conversations, so high five. And come back soon so we can continue to explore this. I think each of those little pieces of the flywheel, and we do this with a lot of the CFOs, but we could really investigate some of those things in ways that maybe people, like we just did with innovation, are surprised to think about or could be different to think about. So thank you so much for sharing all this with us today.
Thank you. As always, thank you.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.